Howdy, guys, and welcome to night 5 of season 23 of Big Brother, and welcome to Cliff Notes from outside the Big Brother house. Hope y'all had a fantastic weekend. And I gotta say, it's another kind of chaotic, messy evening in the Big Brother house. Lots of conversations going on in advance of the veto ceremony that's going to be taking place today. Lots of conversations, so let's get right into it. Now, early in the evening, the house guests have the backyard, which is always a nice thing for those inside the house. And they took advantage of it last night. Most of the group was out by the pool table playing kind of a convoluted game, but it was basically a truth or dare type situation. They were having a lot of fun with it. The highlights included Travis dressing up in drag, Hannah wearing Derek F's clothing, Tiffany impersonating Frenchie's nomination ceremony. So they were just having fun. It's nice to see the house guests after a few days of absolute chaos and pandemonium. It's nice to see the house guests getting a chance to blow off a little steam, having fun as a group. Big Brother's a stressful situation. It's nice for them to have just a few moments where they can just have fun and bond together. So it was nice to see that. It didn't last, but it is nice to see for a little while. Now, in addition to them playing the truth or dare game, we did see a lot of other things taking place in the backyard, including Frenchie spending much of the early evening holding court up in the new outdoor balcony. Man, I love that balcony. It's pretty cool. And then later he had some conversations in the house as well. One of the things he was doing with quite a few of the house guests was he was using chess pieces and actually using those to represent Kyland, and then other times representing Alyssa or Travis, different scenarios, putting two chess pieces up there, calling up different house guests and saying, okay, here's one, here's the other. Who are you choosing? Which are you closer to? Things like that. Frenchie is trying to get info from everyone, trying to figure out everyone's loyalties while he still has a chance to. Now, keep this in mind. He still has a little bit of power because if the veto is used, he makes the renomination. So people want to keep in Frenchie's good faith or good side. So he still has a little bit of power left, and he's utilizing that to try to get as much information as he can. Once the veto ceremony is finished and Frenchie has or hasn't used, renominated someone else based on if the veto is used, at that point, Frenchie's power is basically out for the week. There's not going to be a tiebreaker in the eviction on Thursday night. So Frenchie's done. So he's taken advantage of this last little opportunity to get as much information as he could. But it kind of is funny watching him bring everyone up and just grilling them over and over again and forcing them to give answers that a lot of them probably really don't want to be talking about with Frenchie, which way they would lean. So it's kind of a difficult situations at time. Now, some of those conversations we have, at one point we see Brent and Alyssa talking to Frenchie, and Brent's really taking the lead trying to save Alyssa. He is saying that he doesn't trust Kyland, but at the same time, he's also trying to convince Frenchie that Travis is an even bigger threat because of his ability to win competitions. So he's really trying to portray both Kyland and Travis as the bigger target as a way to save Alyssa herself, regardless of who Alyssa may be facing if she's still on the block. Frenchie is saying that he's worried about the bonds that Kyland is building. Who does Frenchie want out? Does he want Kyland out? Does he want Travis out? Does he want someone else out? I don't know. It depends on who he's talking to. I haven't figured it out yet. I kind of have an idea. We'll talk about it. But Frenchie's saying he's worried about the bonds that Kyland's building. But later, Brent tells Alyssa that he's really concerned about Frenchie going back on his word. Frenchie potentially convincing Derek X not to use the veto and forcing it to be a vote between Kyland and Alyssa. And Brent's got a good reason to be thinking that particular scenario as well. The most funny part of this entire conversation, I think, is at one point Frenchie tells or says that Kyland has the support of all the girls, and therefore maybe Kyland needs to go because so many people like him so much. And he says, with that in mind, if Kyland really needs to go, maybe I'll tell Derek X not to use the veto at all and just leave it the way it is. Well, Alyssa, who's on the block right now, immediately says, no, I'm on the block versus Kyland. Why would you do that, Frenchie? Frenchie at that point says, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, never mind. So Frenchie playing so many different scenarios over in his mind, sometimes is forgetting exactly who he's talking to and everyone else's interest in the game as well. I thought that was kind of funny. Another conversation. This one involves Frenchie talking to Travis. And Frenchie is asking Travis, saying, look, could you convince Derek X not to use the veto, but make sure that no one knows that suggestion is coming from me? Which gets right back to Brent's concern that Frenchie may not actually want the veto to be used. That sounds like that's, again, a very valid concern. It sounds like to me that Frenchie would prefer Kylan to be gone, that maybe Kylan really is his top target, but he doesn't want the blood on his hands for that happening. Instead, he wants to be able to blame Derek X for not using the veto. Basically say, I didn't want Kylan gone at all. I didn't want Alyssa in danger. But Derek X, he screwed it all up again and didn't use the veto. Well, again, he's the one behind suggesting to Travis that, hey, maybe convince Derek X not to use the veto. A dangerous game that Frenchie's playing when he's making suggestions under the radar. It'll come back and bite him eventually. Most certainly, I would expect. But so there you go. It sounds like Frenchie may have a number one target at Kylan, but there's a lot of flexibility in Frenchie's thinking. We do have later, Travis mentions to Derek X about Frenchie's suggestion to not use a veto, which obviously has Derek X very confused. Derek X has said he really kind of wants to do what the HOH wants. He thought that was to use the veto. Now he's hearing that, well, maybe not so much, maybe keep it the same. Derek X is extremely confused as a result of this. Join the crowd, Derek X. I get you. I empathize. I certainly do. Another conversation we have later, Frenchie is talking directly to Derek X, and he throws Kylan under the bus. He is telling Derek X that, look, Kylan isn't loyal. He actually tried to make a final two with me, Derek X. Kylan approached me for a final two, so you can't trust him the way you think you can. He's a dangerous person to use. Now, keep this in mind. Derek X has already said repeatedly, or has told Kylan repeatedly that he will use a veto. He will take Kylan off the block. And he seems to be okay if Travis goes up as the replacement nominee, which sounds like the most likely option if the veto is used. But Frenchie, again, is in there saying, look, I don't care what may have been said beforehand. You can't trust Kylan. So he's giving Derek some things to think about. In an even later conversation with Alyssa present, Frenchie suggests that Derek X should pull Alyssa off, saying, look, how about this scenario? Pull Alyssa off. So now that we've got Kylan and Travis both on the block, and he's claiming that Alyssa could be at risk otherwise, so let's just get you off completely. I don't think that's what he wants, but it's something I'm sure he knows that Alyssa would like to hear. Derek X is saying, yeah, I don't think Alyssa is in as much threat as you want. My team isn't going to vote to send Alyssa home. I think she's okay. So Derek X is kind of opposing that. He doesn't want to use a veto on Alyssa. That's not his choice. But Frenchie's pushing that particular option at this moment in time. We've got another conversation. This is a conversation that Frenchie is having with Sarah Beth and Claire. I think if I remember correctly, back in the reef room, Frenchie is trying to smooth things over with Claire because remember, Claire, her team Queens has both Kylan on the block now, and Travis is being looked at as a potential replacement nominee who is also on team Queens. So Claire is a little concerned that she's got two teammates at risk. Frenchie's trying to smooth things over with her. He's saying, look, Claire, I know that you potentially are going to have someone on your team on the block. If you would vote that person out of the house, in exchange, I will make sure that your team Queens and my team Joker, that we work together going forward. We'll make sure you're protected. I don't want you to worry that you're down a member if you'll just work with me and vote one of those members out. So that's the pitch he's throwing to Claire last night. So we've got that. All right, now, taking a little departure from the strategy discussion for just a second. Frenchie came up with an idea last night to do a scripted diary room session, a dual session. He wants to do it with Sarah Beth, where he basically is sitting on the diary room couch and saying, what's wrong with my GPS? At which point Sarah Beth jumps up from behind and says, recalculating. he thinks it'll be an iconic moment. It'll blow up the internet. It'll go down in Big Brother history. I think there's other things that have happened this week that are much, much more likely to go down in Big Brother history and much more likely to be remembered a few seasons on down the road. But Frenchie thinks that is just the ultimate. It's going to get everyone's attention. And we get to see Frenchie pitch this particular little thing and practice it multiple times in front of the other house guests. He really is focused on that. And I get it. It may be nothing more than Frenchie wanting to get his own brain to stop thinking about scenarios and threats and everything else for just a moment by trying to have a little bit of fun. So Frenchie, I don't know if we'll see it on the episode or not, but Frenchie is bound and determined to do this little skit and see if everyone appreciates it as much as he does. We do have a Team Jokers meeting. Remember a day or two ago, I think Azza and Derek F and Brittany were kind of complaining that it seemed like Frenchie was talking to everyone else besides his own team. Well, I guess he got the message because he has pulled all of them in to have a Team Jokers meeting. And it's funny because Azza actually, as soon as he came in, she said, I just want to go to sleep, and was trying to beg off on having a conversation. But it happened anyway. Frenchie wanted to have the talk. And so eventually they start talking. Frenchie is saying that he really wants Travis gone. And the rest of the team saying, yeah, Travis makes sense. We're fine sending Travis home, which goes a little bit against what we saw earlier about him actually on the download targeting perhaps Kylan. But he says, I want Travis gone. But if the veto isn't used, then I want Kylan going home. Or he says, I think if the veto isn't used, Kylan's going home. The votes are against him. And Azza is saying, yeah, you may want to check your votes. I'm not sure that's the case. I don't think Kylan's the one going home if the veto's not used. But Frenchie saying, no, it's going to be Kylan. So we'll see what happens. We have another conversation between Derek X and Kylan, several conversations throughout the evening. And again, Derek X has promised to use his veto on Kylan. We'll see if it happens. But again, he's committing to using the veto with conversations last night. He knows Travis is going to be the replacement. My gut feel, I think he's going to use it. I feel like Derek X, even though Frenchie's tried to sour the relationship with Kylan by saying he can't be trusted, I think Derek X probably will use the veto. I may be wrong. There's so much going on. Who knows? But I think he'll use it this afternoon, this morning when they have the veto competition. We do have. Yeah, everyone's talking. Everyone's playing nice for most part. We did have a bit of a blow up involving Kylan and Frenchie. At one point, Frenchie brings Kylan up to the balcony out upstairs, and they start talking about different hypotheticals about what could happen and what way Kylan would go and all that. And Frenchie really didn't like one or two of Kylan's answers or Kylan questioning him back. I think Kylan was upset because Frenchie was talking about a scenario where the veto isn't used. And it seems that Frenchie took Kylan's response as a bit of a threat that if just saying, if you don't support me, Frenchie, then, you gotta be careful. I don't. Frenchie took as a threat when Kylan started responding to some of these scenarios. To be honest, I'm a bit lost with that whole disagreement and why it just got so wonky at the end. In the end, I think it's just again, it's just scenarios, and it's just them getting off kilter with each other. But Xavier tries to step in and calm things down a little bit and soothe things out. Frenchie makes an interesting mention. Frenchie says, "Hey, look, if things don't go my way, if I don't feel like people are really willing to work with me, I may just throw a curveball on this whole process." And I assume when he's saying that, he means renominating someone else if the veto is used that no one is expecting whatsoever, maybe to throw a wrench in Kylan's plans. He's making a threat of his own. I think he may be talking about Claire of a curveball. If he doesn't feel like he's getting enough support from Kylan, instead of putting Travis up and the assumption that Travis would go home over Kylan, maybe put someone like Claire up. Have all the women supporting Claire instead of Kylan, and maybe making life a little bit more difficult for Kylan. I'm kind of reading between the lines, but the end result is there was a bit of a flare up because they spent too much time talking about too many what if, could be's, and just got each other in a wrinkle as a result of it. Now, at one point, Christian mentions that the last person to talk to Frenchie is the one whose opinion that Frenchie typically follows. So he is going to stay up all night long and make sure that he talks to him last. And Alyssa agrees. And I think they pretty much got what they wanted. They were up forever. I don't know how long these house guests were up. I finally had to shut it down 5 in the morning or so, 6 in the morning. They stayed up a long time, but eventually Christian and Alyssa were able to get in and talk to Frenchie towards the very end of the late evening. A couple of quick things to mention before we shut it down. At one point, Frenchie tells Travis that it's too early in the game to be making final 2 or final 3 deals. And in Alliance news, Frenchie and Christian have just agreed to a final 2 agreement. So, it's too early to be making final 2, final 3 deals for other people, but for me, maybe we'll make a few here and there. I don't blame them. People are covering as many bases as they can, and Frenchie is no exception. And trying to make sure he's got as many relationships set up in place as he can. The problem is that Frenchie and Christian have agreed to this final 2, but Christian then told Derek F., about the agreement, and Frenchie already has a final 2 with Derek as well. So now they've told each other that, hey, we both now have final 2s with Frenchie. They're both acting as though they aren't really serious. In the world of Big Brother, if someone approaches you with an alliance, you never say no, right? Yeah, you've got to say yes. So they're both acting as though it wasn't a serious agreement that they made with each other. And perhaps, and probably they aren't serious. But the concern is that now both of them know that Frenchie has theoretically a final 2 agreement with the other one. So it's tough to keep secrets inside the Big Brother house. So we do have that. We'll see how that pans out going forward. And finally, in showmance news, Whitney and Christian spent a lot of time in the hammock, kind of snuggling, kind of cuddling together. Dangerous actions, dangerous times while you've got the showmance prowler still keeping an eye on everything. We suspected, or there was talk that it maybe was Christian and Alyssa. Maybe it's Christian and Whitney instead. We'll find out whether that goes anywhere, or whether they were just trying to keep each other warm in a cold July night in Los Angeles. I don't know. Guys, we're going to shut it down for there. Again, a lot of talk. A lot of things will be cleared up today once we have this veto ceremony. Then we'll know for certain, as certain as you can be in Big Brother, we'll know the 2 people who theoretically are going to be on the block come Thursday night's eviction ceremony. And now we'll see the campaigning begin between those 2, and some loyalties and true colors will finally start showing up. Guys, y'all have a great one. I'll check in again with you tomorrow. SKD 143. Cheers, my friends. Bye.